Hello, I'm taking on a challenge to beat every playable Nintendo-published game. Welcome to the next episode. The next game is Popeye. If you've been watching my summaries up until this point, you'll know that Nintendo already has some history with the Popeye franchise. Back when Nintendo was developing Donkey Kong, Nintendo had already tried to obtain a license to use the Popeye characters in the game, but they were unable to reach an agreement. And instead, Nintendo designed new characters for the game. Not even a month later, though, the Popeye characters would instead appear on the Game & Watch system, starring as the main characters of Game & Watch Popeye. Now, fast forward a year later, and it would appear that King Feature Syndicate realized that it was a mistake to not allow Popeye into the arcades, as Nintendo finally obtained the rights to use the Popeye characters and released the arcade game Popeye in November of 1982. The game featured an assortment of Popeye characters, from Popeye, Brutus, and Olive Oyl, to the Sea Hag, J. Wellington Wimpy, and Sweet Pea. After the game launched, it had a generally favorable reception, although looking back at the reviews, it is interesting to see the Electronic Games magazine already start to claim that the Donkey Kong style of games had started to oversaturate the market. The game would receive a bunch of early console ports handled by the Parker brothers, but those weren't published by Nintendo, so I'm not going to be playing them. I haven't talked about this too much in my other videos, but ports like these were actually pretty common during this era. Donkey Kong saw quite a few of these ports as well, and even Skyscraper saw a port to the Atari 2600. Recently, in 2021, the game saw a 3D reimagining on the Switch, but let's not talk about that one. Alright, let's take a look at the actual game. After you put your coins in, you are shown a quick cutscene. Brutus slides towards Olive Oyl and declares his love for her. She rejects him and turns towards Popeye instead. She then shouts at him and says, "Popeye, catch hearts!" Brutus isn't happy about this, and the actual game begins. Your objective in this level is to navigate the stage and collect the hearts sent down by Olive Oyl. If you take too long to grab a heart, it will sink into the water and you will lose a life. This didn't happen to me too much though, as you have quite a bit of time to grab them once they land in the water before they actually completely sink. To navigate the stage, you can walk up and down the staircases, but there's no way to jump other than just walking off an edge. This doesn't sound too hard, right? Well, you see, Brutus is not going to make this easy for you. He wanders around the stage and tries to hunt you down. Normally, there's nothing you can do to stand up against him. If you touch him, you lose a life. If he swats at you from above or below, you will also lose a life. He makes the game much harder, as he often makes sudden movements, and he can be pretty hard to avoid in certain situations. He's got a fairly impressive AI for the time too, and he's far more complicated than Donkey Kong, who would just stand still and send barrels at you. There is a way to fight back against him though. There's a spinach can on the side that occasionally changes its position. If you grab it, you gain momentary invincibility, and it plays the iconic Popeye theme. I'm coming for you. If you run into Brutus while this power-up is active, he goes flying and sinks into the water. He comes back pretty quickly though, so this mostly just serves as a way to get out of sticky situations. He runs away from you while you're in this form too, and it can actually be pretty tough to catch up with him. The spinach can only be used once per level, so you've got to use it wisely. Additionally, apart from the spinach, there's another way to deal with Brutus on stage 1. With a well-timed jump and a punch, you can momentarily trap Brutus by knocking what I think is a punching bag into a barrel which falls on top of his head. There's actually another big obstacle on this stage. Occasionally, the Sea Hag will show up and throw a bottle at you. You can punch these out of the air, but this does slow you down, and this slowdown can be detrimental when Brutus is hot on your trail. Additionally, Brutus himself will also occasionally throw a barrage of bottles at you. You can punch all these out of the air, but it's generally better to just try and move to a different floor to avoid them. Occasionally, you'll end up with bottles flying at you from both directions. And these can be really bad situations to be stuck in, and seem impossible to get out of at times. Each heart you get fills up a square in your house on the top left corner of the screen. The objective for this stage is to fill out every square in the house. This level is honestly pretty tough. While I did somehow manage to beat on my first try, later on I lost a ton of runs to this level. This game is all about avoiding Brutus, which can be surprisingly tough. There are times when he'll jump down and swat at the row below him, meaning that even if he is 2 rows above you, you are not completely safe from him. Once you beat the level, you are immediately thrown into the next one. You change to a different location for this one, and now, instead of catching hearts, you are catching musical notes. This is the level where Wimpy and Sweet Pea show up. Wimpy helps you bounce up to the higher levels using a seesaw, and if you manage to time this jump and reach Sweet Pea while he is low enough down, you'll earn extra points. Honestly, I generally found this level to be a little easier than the first one. You can use the through loop on the sides to juke Brutus pretty easily in this one, since he can't actually loop around the sides himself. You also only need to catch 16 musical notes in this one, as opposed to the 24 hearts you needed in the first stage. It can be tough if you get stuck with Brutus in the bottom area, but at least the spinach is near enough that you can often use it to escape tricky situations down there. It took me a second to realize how this one worked, and I lost a life by bouncing up the seesaw while Brutus was right above me. I lost a couple more lives to Brutus, and during one of these lives lost, I didn't even realize that Brutus swatted down and hit me. I got my first game over here. After this, I kept struggling to even make it back to level 2. Why is it always the first run that goes the best? Brutus' AI was absolutely brutal, and I kept getting game over after game over in level 1. Finally, I was eventually able to make it back to level 2 though, and I even managed to beat it this time around. On to level 3. This level was the last level in the game, and it's probably the toughest of the 3. On my first attempt, I hardly even got to see the level though. I took a moving platform to the right, and I got taken out by a sea hag soon after. Game over. I was already starting to get better at level 1 though at this point, and I was able to get back to level 3 before long. In this one, your goal is to grab the letters that spell out the word help. With each letter, a new piece of the ladder is added to help you reach olive oil. A new obstacle is added in this one. Vultures swing down and attack Popeye, although they can be punched out of the air. What makes this level tough though is that there's no way to loop around the sides. As a result, this level feels way more cramped, and it's really easy to get stuck in a bad situation. I lost a lot of lives to this level. In one of my runs, I got so close. I only needed one more letter when I jumped straight into a vulture. All I needed to do was punch the vulture, but I got too greedy and jumped straight into its beak. Eventually, after many attempts though, I was finally having a good run. I only had 2 letters left, and I hadn't even used up the spinach. I grabbed the spinach, and while Brutus was running away, I safely grabbed the last 2 letters. With that, I finally reached olive oil, and level 3 was complete. It shows Popeye's face just like the intro in the classic shorts, and the iconic toot toot is played in celebration. In typical arcade fashion, you are sent back to level 1 again. At this point, the game gets even harder. The sea hag is now constantly in the corner throwing skulls at you. These skulls bounce around and home in on the player. They can be destroyed with a punch, but they just add to the hecticness of the game and make it even more difficult. I lost my remaining lives here, and my run was ended. I think beating 1 loop was a good goal for this one though, so after this run, the game was complete. On to the review. A lot of people compare this one to Donkey Kong, but I don't really think that's totally a fair comparison. The objective is completely different in this one. Rather than trying to reach the end of the stage, this one focuses on dodging a villain and collecting items. While Brutus makes this game really difficult, his AI was impressive and probably the most complex enemy I'd seen in any game up to this point. Another big change is that there's no jumping in this one, so it's a bit more focused on smartly navigating the stage and timing your punches. While I did enjoy learning how to get better and better at navigating through the stage, I can't help but wonder if giving you more advanced movement options, like jumping, would have had a positive impact on the game by giving you more escape options. While this one didn't feel quite as good to control as the Donkey Kong games, I still had a pretty good time with this one, and I gave the game a 7 out of 10. Thanks for watching the video. If you want to see more of these in the future, make sure you subscribe to the channel so that you won't miss out on the next one. Also leave a like if you enjoyed it, since it'll help the channel grow and motivate me to continue this series. I hope I will see you in the next step of my quest to beat every Nintendo game.